Hello and welcome to Maximum Sean Paul, the first talking book about the artist. It was written and researched by Tim Footman, music is by Amanda Thompson, and it is read by Sean Jones. You can check out our full catalogue on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk.
Basically, music been something that's been good to me all my life, so it's brought all the rest of those things. So I think I would pick music straight up.
For such a small island, Jamaica's influence on the world of music has been massive and profound. Bob Marley, the first ever third world superstar, is the most obvious example. He took his politically and religiously charged songs of pain and celebration first to Britain, then to America and the world. But the seductive rhythms of blue beat, ska, rocksteady, roots reggae, lovers rock and ragga have found their way into pop in all corners of the planet. These sounds first began to develop in Jamaica in the late 50s and early 60s. Musicians listened to black American records on the radio, especially rhythm and blues from the southern city of New Orleans, and gave the music a few local twists. The new style, with its syncopated rhythms and jerky rhythm guitars, came to be known as ska. By the late 60s, ska had mutated into a slower style, easier for people to dance to and musicians to play during the hot Kingston summers. Reggae, as we know it, was born. This, in turn, spawned dozens of new styles, including the sweet pop of lovers rock, the spacey, sonic experimentation of dub, and the more serious, conscious tracks inspired by the Rastafarian faith. Later, the electronic sounds of ragga and dancehall reflected the feelings and creativity of young Jamaicans who merged the characteristic rhythms of reggae with new technologies and styles. The first people to pick up on the music outside Jamaican communities were white working-class kids in Britain, many of who were followers of the skinhead craze. It was this enthusiasm that sent records such as Desmond Decker's Israelites and Double Barrel by Dave and Ansel Collins to the top of the UK pop charts in the late 60s and early 70s. Ken Booth, Janet Kay and the Texan-born Johnny Nash all had big chart hits in the more commercial, relaxed lovers rock vein in the mid-70s. Meanwhile, Bob Marley and the Wailers were electrifying audiences across the world with their arena-friendly reggae and continued to sell large quantities even after their leader's untimely death in 1981. Towards the end of the 1970s, reggae was a big influence on many punk and new wave bands, especially The Clash, The Police, The Ruts and The Slits. Meanwhile, bands on the two-tone label such as The Specials, The Body Snatchers and The Beat used ska to preach the message of black and white unity in the face of racial unrest and growing unemployment. Birmingham's UB40 arrived at about the same time, drawing their influences more from the sounds of early 70s reggae. A bunch of teens and pre-teens from Birmingham then took on the old ganja song Pass the Dutchie to the top of the UK charts in 1982, under the group name Musical Youth. There was another big craze for reggae, or more strictly reggae-influenced pop, in Britain between about 1993 and 1995. Jamaican acts such as Shaggy, Shabba Ranks, Inner Circle and Shaka Demus and Pliers all had top 5 hits, as did the British Pato Banton, CJ Lewis and the veterans UB40. The rhythms even showed up in such unlikely places as Canada, which gave us the white reggae-influenced rapper Snow, and equally chilly Sweden, home of Ace of Base. At one point in 1993, the top 3 places on the UK pop single charts were held by Shaggy's Oh Carolina, Snow's Informer and Mr Loverman by Shabba Ranks. It was a positive ragga explosion. Reggae's popularity in North America has tended to be less strong. There is a vibrant Caribbean community in New York, but to outsiders, the Jamaicans and other West Indians can seem indistinguishable from their African-American neighbours. Until Shaggy and Sean Paul came along, the only reggae artist to top the US single charts was the laid-back Londoner Maxi Priest, with Close to You in 1990. However, Caribbean and Black American music have influenced each other greatly over the decades. In the late 1950s, the Trinidadian style of calypso, popularised by the American singer Harry Belafonte, was considered to be a serious rival to the upstart genre of rock and roll. Pioneers of ska and reggae like Prince Buster and Bob Marley were big fans of R&B and soul music in the 1950s and 60s. Marley had even worked on the car assembly lines of Detroit when the city was the home of Motown Records. But the Caribbean's most significant gift to American music came in the early 1970s, when immigrants brought concepts such as toasting, dub, and the whole culture of sound systems to their new homes in the Bronx and Brooklyn. The Jamaican Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash, born in Barbados, were among the most significant movers and shakers in the early days of hip-hop. In the 80s, rappers and DJs such as KRS-One and Scott LaRock of Boogie Down Productions continued to use reggae rhythms heavily in their music. More recently, there are clear ragga influences in the music of Busta Rhymes, whose parents were Jamaican. During the 1980s and early 90s, though, the obvious reggae influence on American music making grew weaker. There were occasional exceptions, such as the Fugees' version of Bob Marley's No Woman No Cry in 1996, and Big Mountain's extremely annoying reggae-ish take on Peter Frampton's Baby I Love Your Way. White rock acts such as No Doubt and Less Than Jake claimed to be influenced by ska, but they were usually talking about the British sounds of two-tone artists, not the Jamaican originals. Most fans of American urban music or punk rock probably thought of the Caribbean as a place for hedonistic beach holidays rather than as the source of great music. And then a light-skinned, part Chinese, corn-rowed guy from a good family in Jamaica started making one serious noise.
A lot of companies put money into dancehall music without knowing how to market these kids. They immediately lost the base crowd. Jamaica was like, within 2 years, what's happening with that artist? I don't know, because there's more new stuff going on here now. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they were concentrating on.
Sean Paul Enriquez was born in Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, on January the 8th, 1973. Norbrook in St Andrew, where he grew up, is by no means a rough and tough ghetto of Jamaica. It's a middle-class area on the outskirts of Kingston. Most people who knew Sean when he was a boy probably thought that he'd end up as a responsible, respectable member of the island's middle classes. His part Chinese mother was a well-known artist. His father, of Portuguese origin, had a slightly more notorious background, as he was rumoured to be descended from a gang of horse rustlers. Because of his exotic ethnicity, Sean was known to the neighbours as the copper-colour Chinese boy. He was educated at Walmers High School, then later the exclusive Bel Air High School in Mandeville, an establishment responsible for the training of several movers and shakers in Jamaica's political and business elite. Young Sean's musical abilities made themselves apparent at a very early age. As he tells it, when he was about 4 years old, he was at a barbecue and became separated from his parents. As any child would, he started crying, but to the amazement of the other guests, he was bawling away in the same key as the background music. It seemed that the little boy had perfect pitch. He didn't throw himself single-mindedly into music, however. He was an athletic child and a particularly strong swimmer, excelling at water polo. But in Jamaica, nobody can escape the rhythms of reggae, and Sean was surrounded by the sounds of legends such as Bob Marley and Peter Tosh. He was not, however, a reggae purist. One of his favourite songs when he was growing up was Another One Bites the Dust by the British rock band Queen, a single strongly influenced by the New York disco act Chic, and specifically the bass guitar lines of Bernard Edwards on the track Good Times. Both tracks were widely sampled on early hip-hop tracks, the spacey, thudding rhythms also fitting well with the booming sounds of dub reggae, as created by the likes of Lee Scratch Perry and King Tubby. The first album that Sean bought for himself was the soundtrack to the hip-hop movie Beat Street, featuring numbers by Africa Bambaataa and Melly Mel. He purchased this seminal record with money received for his 12th birthday. There is a Jamaican tradition called bumming, which involves birthday boys getting their behinds kicked. So, to avoid a bruised butt, Sean hid on the roof of his parents' house and played the groundbreaking New York hip-hop rhythms over and over. This episode might paint the picture of a friendless outsider, but Sean was a popular, well-rounded child. He also had a fairly happy home life, although this was tested at the age of 13. His father was jailed for possession of marijuana, and young Sean, already travelling on the hormonal roller coaster of adolescence, became rather depressed. Luckily, he found positive ways to deal with the situation. His father had always encouraged his sporting efforts, and Sean became increasingly obsessed with swimming, eventually joining the Jamaican water polo team. He also represented his country at swimming in the Carifta Games in 1989 and 1991. And of course, he still had his music to help him through the difficult years. He took a few piano lessons when he was 14 years old, but quickly reacted against the petty rules, like having to sit up straight. His mother then bought him a little Casio keyboard for $30 at a flea market. Such a contraption would probably seem rather primitive now, but in the 1980s these pocket synthesizers were hugely popular, with bedroom musicians everywhere. Sean's keyboard included a small drum machine, and he relaxed by constructing new rhythms. At about this time, during the mid-1980s, Jamaican music was going through major changes. Bob Marley's death in 1981 had left something of a leadership gap in reggae, and his political and religious messages were being edged out by the aggressive, witty, sexual boasting of ragamuffin music. On the production side, musicians were taking tips from music makers in the hip-hop and early house genres in the United States. Reggae had always been founded on rock-solid rhythm sections like the brothers Aston and Carlton Barrett, key members of Bob Marley's Wailers, drummer Sly Dunbar and bass guitarist Robbie Shakespeare. Now, the new technology allowed producers to construct electronic rhythms, or riddims as they were usually called, with keyboards and drum machines. The riddims would usually be faster than standard reggae beats, harking back to the more frantic tempos of ska and blue beat. Performers would seize upon popular rhythms over which they'd create lyrics and melodies, usually revolving around tales about their sexual prowess and consumption of ganja. At any one time, there might be several different tracks in the singles chart, all using the same rhythm. This new genre of Jamaican music was known to its practitioners and fans as dancehall. Apart from the rhythm producers, the key individuals in dancehall are the performers who create and give voice to the words and tunes. Confusingly, the performers are usually known as DJs, as distinct from the world of hip-hop, in which the DJ is the guy who scratches and manipulates records to create a soundtrack for the MC. Because the standard dancehall style is somewhere between singing and rapping, an alternative title for these central performers is Sing-Jays. Sean himself has described the role of the DJ in dancehall as a kid telling about his life and dreams and aspirations. Such was the music that provided the soundtrack to the teenage years of Sean Paul Enriquez. But his wasn't going to be an overnight success. Far from it.
My theory was that if I did it straight from home, supported my own production, my own people who were producing and that kind of thing, that by the time it reached up here, everybody would be on it and be like, yeah, that's home, that's grown stuff.
In some ways, Sean was a privileged child. Many young Jamaicans grow up with little in the way of formal education, and the only way out of the ghetto seems to be through the use of drugs or guns, or, more often, both. Sean didn't always have it easy, and his father's imprisonment shook him badly, but he did have his schooling to fall back on. At this stage, although he enjoyed music, he didn't take it seriously as a potential career. His first dream was to be an architect, but his school grades weren't good enough. Also failing to win a college place to study marketing, Sean found himself working in a bank for a short while. "I was counting money," he later recalled. "It was not my own. I did not like it." He might not have been the world's greatest student, but Sean was far from lazy. He took a course in hotel management at the College of Art, Science and Technology on Kingston's Hope Road, opting for tough training in the kitchens and learning to cook a 5-course cordon bleu meal. Whatever situation he might find himself in, he now had a trade and a level of self-discipline that would come in handy later. According to Sean, he can still knock up a mean chicken cordon bleu, deboning a whole bird in 11 minutes flat. However, music was gradually becoming more important in his life. He was creating new rhythms with his Casio keyboard and writing songs around them. Although he still loved the classic reggae of Bob Marley and American soul singers such as Al Green, it was more the modern dancehall style that provided much of his inspiration, together with lashings of American hip-hop. Early dancehall stars included the albino Yellow Man, the eccentric Eka Mouse, and the macho Co-Pilot, later better known as Shabba Ranks. All contributed to a scene where sexism and homophobia were the order of the day. In some ways, it was a parallel movement to the nihilism of American gangster rap. Sean's dancehall idol, however, was William Maragg, who went under the stage name Supercat. He was quite willing to sing about standard dancehall themes, from gun-toting machismo to girls' backsides, but he also offered a level of political consciousness and commitment that the likes of Shabba seemed to lack. In the early 1990s, Supercat had some success in the United States, recording with the rap reggae crossover act Heavy D and the Boys and R&B icon Mary J. Blige. Another important figure was the DJ Don Ute. Born Jason Williams, he came from Sean's St Andrew neighbourhood and shared a similar middle-class background. He acted as a mentor to the fledgling DJ, putting him in touch with key figures in the Jamaican music industry. Sean also made contact with members of the legendary band Third World, an outfit formed in 1973 which had lost a lot of critical respectability because of their efforts to take reggae to a wider market. However, they remain popular in Jamaica as well as further afield, and their version of the OJ's soul classic Now That We've Found Love remains a summer standard on radio stations across the planet. The band's Cat Core helped Sean to record some demos of his songs. Sean, who had now dropped his surname in favour of the snappier Sean Paul, was getting a little recognition as a songwriter. But what he really wanted was success as a performer, and his focus was on the intense sounds of dancehall rather than the pop reggae created by Third World. As Sean himself put it, dancehall was really the right avenue for me to express myself, to get people to hear me out about how I saw the world. He wanted to be a dancehall DJ on a par with the likes of Supercat, Don Ute or even Shabba Ranks. And finally, at the age of 23, things were starting to move in the right direction for Sean Paul. No more counting other people's money or serving them 5-course meals.
My accent is the same language. It's just a certain street twang, or it's just a whole culture of a country that more time when I start talking out loud, nobody can understand what I say. I have to say blood. You see it? So I gotta slow it down, and I just got used to that.
The demos that Sean had recorded with the encouragement of Cat Core were creating a buzz around Kingston. His willingness to perform at the smallest dance or barbecue also pinpointed him as someone with the drive and perseverance to succeed in the business. But nobody was going to take him seriously until he had some actual product to call his own. Sean's lucky break came from Joseph Bonner, better known as the DJ Spanner Banner. Spanner is probably best known for writing and recording the original version of Tease Me, although the worldwide hit version was recorded by his brother Pliers, together with Shaka Demus. Spanner's collaboration with Sean Paul was entitled Ladies Man. Released on Spanner's label Sweet Angel Productions, it topped the Jamaican charts and brought Sean to the attention of the mainstream record-buying public. It was a notable success, but he was hungry for more. He was grateful to Spanner for the boost to his career, but he wanted to make a success in his own name. The producer of Ladies Man was Jeremy Harding, and he immediately spotted the potential of the junior member of the duo. Apart from his abilities in the studio, Harding owned a small Kingston record label called Too Hard. He didn't have the highest profile in the Jamaican music business, but he had contacts with the sound systems and radio stations that can get music out to the listening public. His main claim to fame was his production work on Beanie Man's hit Who Am I?, the single that gave Beanie crossover success into the North American and British markets. In 1997, Harding released Sean Paul's first solo single, Baby Girl, swiftly followed by the pumping, infectious numbers Infiltrate and Hackle Me. Sean may have been spending a lot of time in the studio, but he didn't neglect his live work. One of his most important gigs was opening for the ragga-influenced rap star Busta Rhymes when he came to Jamaica in 1997. It was a meeting that was to have an important impact on Sean's career later on. In a matter of a few months, the Jamaican music scene was awash with the dancehall sound of Sean Paul. Throughout 1997 and 1998, the hits continued to pile up. Woman You're Hot, Work With It and Report to Me seemed to monopolise the airwaves. Sean recorded Now Get No Bly, One More Try with producer Donovan Germain, and Excite Me and Deport Them with Tony Kelly on the desk. The last track, a reworking of the bookshelf rhythm, provided one of the earliest examples of Sean's characteristic call, Dutty Yo, a reference to the loose grouping of artists that would help to take Sean Paul's music to the next level.
And in my songs, I'm trying to express in a way that people could understand by still being hardcore. And get busy, you don't understand get busy as a hip-hop term.
Kingston can be a dangerous place, and being a high-profile musician doesn't give you any special protection. In fact, it makes you even more of a target, whether for jealous rivals or opportunistic robbers out to get their hands on the fruit of your talents. Bob Marley narrowly escaped assassination in 1976, and two of his band members, Peter Tosh and Carlton Barrett, were later shot dead. Political poet Mikey Smith and dub pioneer King Tubby also met violent deaths during the 1980s. More recently, the up-and-coming DJ Pan Head came to an untimely end, a tragedy marked by Beanie Man's No Mama No Cry. But that's not the only reason why performers often become loosely affiliated with crews. The sense of camaraderie and loyalty is often a great comfort, especially to new acts starting their careers. Like the hip-hop environment, the world of dancehall can be full of macho bragging. Sean had already had an unpleasant experience on the Caribbean island of Grenada, where a local singer tried to humiliate the Jamaican live on stage. So Sean's decision to join the Dutty Cup crew was psychological, political and musical. Incidentally, for those who don't speak patois, a Dutty Cup is a slang term for a marijuana pipe. His old friend and mentor Don Ute was linked to the group, and Sean found firm friends and worthy collaborators in his fellow crew members Mossy Kid, Luger Man, Dodigan, Chicken and Kid Corrupt. Most of them came from middle-class backgrounds, fairly similar to Sean's, which landed them with the label of being uptown DJs. But with mics in their hands, they could be as down and dirty as any ghetto gangster. Together, the Dutty Cup crew recorded the singles Groove Me and Jamone, both of which became underground hits in the New York clubs, especially those in the Caribbean immigrant communities. It was Sean's first taste of stateside success. The Dutty Cup crew was never a band as such in the way that Third World had been. They occasionally performed as a unit and helped out on each other's solo productions. And there was no doubt who was the most ambitious crew member. As Sean later said, "We all do our own thing, the rest of the family don't want to put out as much stuff, so they just do it whenever they feel." Sean's next big step was to rework his old hit Ladies Man using the rhythm known as Underwater. The version that really gained him attention was a megamix plus accompanying promotional video featuring some of the hottest stars of dancehall, including Buccaneer, General Degree, Buju Banton and Beanie Man. Buju Banton remains a controversial figure in Jamaican music. His early single, Boom Bye Bye, was widely condemned for apparently demanding the execution of gay men. However, Buju later embraced Rastafarianism and used his fame to urge his fans to renounce violence. Former child star Beanie Man is another dancehall sensation who likewise gradually shifted away from his early slackness towards more socially responsible themes. Buju and Beanie, together with Supercat, would come to influence Sean's writing, encouraging him to explore areas beyond smoking, partying and the ladies. And Sean wanted to follow Beanie Man's example in other ways too, making his name beyond Jamaica. Beanie had had some success on British dance floors in 1995 with a jungle remix of his hit Under Me Sensi. In 1998 he signed to Virgin Records in the United States where Who Am I was a hit. Beanie went on to work with artists as diverse as ex-Fuji Wyclef Jean, Cuban trumpet maestro Arturo Sandoval, and even Buddhist action star turned singer-songwriter Steven Seagal. A dancehall star who gets to work with artists from all points on the musical spectrum. Beanie Man had set the example, and Sean Paul was eager to forge ahead and emulate him.
My favorite music video I could say was Far Side. It was just so different to me. It was a song called Drop. I'm not sure who directed it, but they had to learn the whole song backways. You know, the video was weird, people jumping backways up onto walls and that kind of thing. It was strange for me, you know. It was a different vibe and I like that kind of thing.
The likes of Shabba Ranks and Beanie Man had educated some American record buyers about the intricacies of dancehall, but it was hip-hop that was dominating the airwaves. Many rap fans weren't aware that the roots of their music lay in the sound systems of Jamaica. And plenty of people in the reggae and dancehall scenes thought it was high time that the link was made clear. If you mentioned Jamaica to most hip-hop aficionados, they'd probably think you were talking about an area of the Queens Borough in New York City. If American fans knew anything about Sean Paul, it was in his role as a member of the Dutty Cup crew. But even their success had been an underground cult phenomenon, way beyond the experience of the majority of the record buyers, whose musical knowledge extended little further than Top 40 radio and MTV. Sean now embarked on a breakneck series of gigs that covered Europe, Japan, and most importantly North America, to raise his profile as an individual performer. Throughout these, he proved undoubtedly that he could work big crowds away from his home turf. It was in the States that Sean came to the attention of Hype Williams, the legendary director of hip-hop promo videos. Williams was making his first feature film, Belly, an urban thriller starring the rappers DMX and Nas, and featuring T-Bone from TLC and Method Man of the Wu-Tang Clan. DMX was also providing much of the music, and he teamed up with Sean and fellow DJ Mr. Vegas on the track Top Shotter. The collaboration with Mr. Vegas continued when Sean eventually returned to the more familiar surroundings of Jamaica. They came out with a lusty track, Haviget de Galia, better known as Hot Gal Today, in which the smooth-talking Vegas provided an interesting contrast to Sean's gruffer voice over the street sweeper rhythm created by producers Steely and Clevey. Not only was the track a hit in Jamaica as expected, it also did well in the United States, especially in New York and Miami. Unfortunately, what looked like becoming a potentially profitable partnership fell to pieces when Sean and Vegas had a bitter public argument over, of all things, the packaging of the single. But a bout of creative and professional differences wasn't going to put Sean Paul off his stride for too long. Not content with his own recording and performing, he also found the time to set up his own company, Baseline Records, through which he could scout for talent on the dancehall scene and hone his own production skills. By now, Sean had recorded over a dozen hit singles under his own name, and the time seemed right to bring out an album that would showcase his talent. In 2000, the Jamaican label VP released his debut long player, Stage 1, a title implying that this was just the beginning. The album showed something of Sean's range, mixing up his solo hits like Infiltrate and No Bly, with collaborations such as Hot Gal Today, as well as Sound the Alarm and You Must Lose, on which he worked with his Dutty Cup buddy Lugerman. There were several skits, the little comedy sound sketches demanded on long players for Jamaican audiences, and even a demented stab at country music. Faded is a bizarre reworking of Shania Twain's Looks Like We Made It. Stage 1 wasn't a calculated, crafted blockbuster. It was a hurried compilation that demonstrated what Sean had accomplished since his debut 4 years before. There were no concessions to his new American fans. The patois was thick and often indecipherable. The skits demonstrated a particularly Jamaican, often X-rated sense of humour. It was nevertheless a success in the States. Billboard named it the number 4 reggae album of 2000, with Sean placed 3rd in the rankings for Best Reggae Artist. In fact, Sean's profile in the US was getting higher and higher. Hot Gal Today made the Billboard R&B chart and reached number 6 on the rap singles chart. It also turned up on the soundtrack of Shaft, the blaxploitation remake starring the ice-cool Samuel L. Jackson. Sean's career was progressing in a highly satisfactory direction, but he knew he had the potential to do even bigger and better.
You know, I'm a Jamaican kid, and it would have been great to see Bob Marley and the Wailers continue on their fire path. You know what I'm saying?
In the summer of 2000, Sean made a hugely successful appearance at the Summer Jam in New York City, alongside the likes of doomed R&B icon Aaliyah and hip-hop bad boy Snoop Doggy Dogg. He spent the next couple of months playing similar gigs on the east coast of the States, a series of bookings that confirmed his success with the American market. He also became reacquainted with Busta Rhymes. The Brooklyn-born rapper and actor had been one of the key movers in introducing ragga rhythms to the world of hip-hop. And he gave Sean plenty of advice on how to prosper in the American music business. A further boost was the deal struck between his record company VP and the legendary Atlantic Records, home of stars as diverse as Aretha Franklin, Led Zeppelin and The Cause. Sean would maintain control over his product while having access to the American label's promotion and distribution budgets. One change to his working practice was going to take place, though. The frantic pace of the Jamaican recording industry, the pressure to churn out 6 or 8 singles in a year, the obsession with key rhythms, the relaxed attitude to copyright law, this was all in the past. And Sean's next album wasn't going to be a mishmash of tracks released on various labels over the next few years, like Stage 1. It would be a carefully crafted assault on the hearts, minds, ears, and pockets of the great American public. Sean was still happy to offer his skills to other performers and to spread his name by appearing on compilations and soundtrack albums. The Eddie Murphy Robert De Niro caper Showtime, released in 2002, featured his dulcet tones on Money Jane, a collaboration with the Canadian rapper Cardinal Offshore. But Sean Paul's priority was his own career and his own music. The single Gimme the Light, released in North America in 2002, was a pretty good advertisement for Sean as Jamaican superstar. It's a cheerfully upfront song about the joys of smoking ganja and success with various lovely ladies, or, as Rolling Stone put it, a sticky ode to toking with a twinkling beat and an undeniable hook. It would not have been out of place on his debut album, but Sean's talents and horizons had expanded since then. Gimme the Light made the American top 10, a pretty respectable showing. It avoided censorship on America's puritanical TV stations, with a video that implied the light in question was a spotlight, rather than anything related to drugs. But it was the follow-up Get Busy that propelled Sean Paul to stardom. The combination of an irresistible hand-clapping rhythm with the DJ's laid-back delivery and a promotional video that featured scantily clad ladies wiggling their most photogenic assets was a recipe for success. Get Busy duly hit the top of the Billboard charts. The video would go on to earn a nomination for the Best Newcomer Award at the MTV Video Awards in August 2003, although Sean was in the end edged out by the controversial rapper 50 Cent. If Sean's new colleagues at Atlantic Records were looking for an album that summed up his crossover appeal, they surely got it with Dutty Rock. A classic example is the track International Affair, where two key samples define the breadth of Sean's musical style. The 1980 smash Uptown Top Rankin' by Althea and Donna was a pop reggae sensation around the world. I Know You Got Soul by Eric B. and Rakim caused controversy in the mid-1980s for its copyright-flouting similarities to the Bobby Bird single of the same name, and was one of the key records in the development of sampling technology. Another track that mixes up hip-hop and reggae influences is Top of the Game. It features contributions from the human beatbox Razzle of the hip-hop outfit The Roots, while quoting freely from Sean's idol Bob Marley. The line, "When the music hits you feel no pain," is a direct steal from Marley's Trenchtown Rock. Elsewhere, Sean called on the production skills of legends from both camps. Shout Street Respect is manned by the definitive rhythm section of Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare. Their list of clients includes Peter Tosh, Grace Jones, Black Uhuru, Frankie Paul, and even the French cult singer-songwriter Serge Gainsbourg. It's On was produced by King Jammy, who has worked with dancehall stars Capleton and Bounty Killer, not to mention the more melodic Gregory Isaacs. And Sean hadn't forgotten Jeremy Harding, who produced some of his early smashes and came back to helm Top of the Game, Can You Do the Work on his own Liquid Rhythm, and Essa Loca. The Arabic-flavoured Bubble, meanwhile, showcases the skills of the American production duo Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo, better known as the Neptunes. Their work having already enhanced the music of performers ranging from Britney Spears and NSYNC to LL Cool J and Old Dirty Bastard. Sean's Jamaican roots also show when he gets all sweet and sentimental on I'm Still in Love with You. It's a cover of an old reggae classic, originally recorded by Alton Ellis and Marcia Atkins, the sort of thing that he would have heard on the radio while he was a child. Here he duets with the sweet-voiced Sasha, to a backing provided by Steely and Clevey, whose street sweeper rhythm had propelled Hot Gal Today. Sometimes the desire to cover all available styles seems a little bit forced. Having a Spanish-language version of the Caribbean hit Punky here just screams that some marketing executive at Atlantic wanted to exploit Sean Paul's appeal to the Cuban Americans in Miami. But not all the reworkings are so cynical. The collaboration with Busta Rhymes on the Pass the Drovazier remix of Gimme the Light would certainly have raised Sean's profile in the hip-hop world even further. But it was also Sean's personal thank you to someone who'd been a role model and a mentor for several years. The remix was the work of Sean's brother, Jason Jigzagula Enriquez, who's an up-and-coming producer in his own right, and a selector with the Kingston sound system Coppershot. Dutty Rock quickly earned Sean a platinum disc in the States. How come it was so successful with music lovers more used to the rhythms of Eminem or Snoop Doggy Dogg? Elements like the daft skits were there to please Jamaican consumers, and sometimes Sean's thick patois might be hard to comprehend if you've never set foot outside, say, South Dakota. But it's these things that make Dutty Rock stand out from the hip-hop mainstream. And whatever the language difficulties, when Sean sings Dutty got the woody woody on Like Glue on the buyout rhythm, you sort of know he's not singing about carpentry or golf clubs. The language of sex is universal, unless you've got the Walmart-approved clean version, of course. With the success of Dutty Rock and the singles it contained, Sean had done more than simply made his mark on the American record industry. "We're bringing a whole society to the mainstream," he said, "and that's what we need to do. We do it from the grassroots in Jamaica. From there, it can only get bigger." And it did.
We're bringing a whole society, a whole treat from that side to the mainstream in America, and that's what we as a music been needing.
Sean was now, after all his hard work, the undisputed king of the dancehall scene, and he was making some serious inroads into the world of hip-hop as well. Even the Spanish-speaking market appeared to be shelving its Ricky Martin albums and picking up on the man from Norbrook St Andrews. Most performers would have been pretty satisfied with this state of affairs. Not Sean Paul. With the pressing plant still working all hours to fulfil demand for Dutty Rock, he decided to grab himself a slice of R&B action. Blue Cantrell has a background as varied as Sean's. Before she hit it big, the Providence, Rhode Island-born singer worked as a backing vocalist for the likes of Faith Evans and even posed for nude photographs. Sean's kind of woman, maybe. After a huge success in 2001 with her debut album So Blue, she was keen to expand her horizons with her follow-up Bittersweet. It was a more varied album, highlighted by the reggae-influenced track Breathe, a duet with none other than Sean Paul. Although Ms Cantrell took top billing on Breathe, it was a major breakthrough for Sean, especially when the single topped the UK charts for 5 weeks during the summer of 2003. Sean was already a name to drop in specialist circles in Britain. He was named Best Reggae Artist of the Year at the MOBO Awards in 2002. But the success of Breathe was another big break into mainstream music, paving the way for the release of his third solo UK top 10 success, when Like Glue was released in August 2003, entering the chart at number 3. If Blue Cantrell is a big name in R&B, Beyonce Knowles is somewhere between royalty and divinity. As the main voice in Destiny's Child, the Texan-born singer and actress is simply one of the faces of the new millennium. Her debut solo album, Dangerously in Love, was, like Blue Cantrell's LP, an attempt to break out from the restrictions of R&B. As such, it featured hip-hop mayhem from the likes of Missy Elliott and Big Boy from Outkast, and on Baby Boy, the dancehall stylings of Sean Paul. With this track, which had some of the same Arabic flavour that enhanced Bubble on Dutty Rock, Sean demonstrated that he was now able to reach out beyond the stylistic ghettos of dancehall and hip-hop. Beyonce's pop R&B blend crosses all boundaries, and millions of people who wouldn't know a DJ from an MC were now aware of his skills. Keeping it in the family, Sean had earlier offered to work with Beyonce's boyfriend, the New York rap star Jay-Z. What they're going to do was a highlight of Jay's 2002 album The Blueprint 2, The Gift and the Curse, on which the other guests included Beyoncé herself, Dr. Dre and Lenny Kravitz. Clearly, Sean's phenomenal capacity for hard work in the studio hadn't abated now that he'd found himself in the new glossy world of the American recording industry. He also found time to work with the sassy R&B songstress Maya, duetting on the track Things Come and Go on her 2003 album Mood Ring. He took on his one-time chart rival 50 Cent in the collaborative single They Not Ready, and also helped out Busta Rhymes on a reworking of Busta's hit Make It Clap. Incidentally, the title is nothing to do with applause. In Sean's own words, clapping is when a girl puts her head down to the ground, ass in the air like a go-go dancer. She's shaking her ass, making her cheeks clap. So now you know. But despite all this hobnobbing with the great and good of American music, Sean wasn't neglecting his roots. Beanie Man, the dancehall star who had had some success in the States a couple of years previously, asked Sean and the top female DJ Lady Saw to help out on the gritty Boss Man, a track on his album Tropical Storm. So now Sean had shown that he could hold his own with the highest echelons of R&B, hip-hop and, of course, dancehall, without losing his own personal style. Insiders were joking that such was his taste for mixing styles and genres, he'd show up next toasting alongside the Dixie Chicks or on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera House in New York. Never say never.
It was just a big vibe for me to sit down and listen to music from them from a kid. That's my group, yo, for real. Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Sean Paul has a fairly unusual background for a high flyer in the worlds of dancehall and hip-hop. Most stars come from the Kingston ghetto or rough inner-city projects, or the ganglands of south-central Los Angeles. Or at least they'd like you to think so. Sean's never made any secret of the fact that his upbringing, like that of members of his Dutty Cup crew, was a rather more comfortable one than some of his rivals enjoyed. At the same time, he takes delight in adopting the streetwise mannerisms of the ghetto-bred ragamuffin. Much of the essence of dancehall is semi-comical boasting about the DJ's own sexual attractiveness, not to mention his capacity for smoking ganja. And Sean's quite happy to take this attitude beyond his lyrics. The videos for Gimme the Light and Get Busy featured their fair share of gyrating, booty-shaking women, and the DJ was quite open about his sexual predilections. She could be skinny or big and fat, he once told an interviewer, it doesn't matter. She's just got to move on time, that's essential. In another interview with the hip-hop magazine The Source, he admitted that he quite likes the look of Alicia Keys and Lil' Kim, if they're interested, and gets turned on by the idea of getting down with a lady cop or even a teacher. He didn't specify whether his posh education at Bel Air High gave him these ideas or even opportunities. For someone whose father did time for ganja offences, Sean's very forthright on the benefits of the drug and has pushed for the Jamaican government to legalise the trade. He claims it makes him more reflective and conscious and that it helps his songwriting. He also says that his days of competitive swimming built up his lung capacity so that he can smoke more. His crusading zeal for the weed earned him a nod from the pro-cannabis magazine High Times, when the Gimme the Light single earned him a coveted Doobie Award in 2002. Unlike some of his fellow stars, however, Sean's been pretty good at keeping his nose clean when it comes to getting attention from the authorities. His fate in Police skit on Dutty Rock, where he's arrested after a patrolman smells ganja in his car, is just an invention. But he did have one high-profile brush with the law in the summer of 2003. He was performing at the Reggae Sumfest in Jamaica's Montego Bay, when his mouth became just a little too dutty and he treated the crowd to a string of obscenities. The authorities charged him with public profanities, and a contrite Sean was forced to attend Montego Bay Magistrates Court and pay a fine of 2,000 Jamaican dollars. The alternative would have been 10 days in jail, which is very rock and roll, but would have interrupted his touring schedule. "I am truly sorry about what happened," said Sean after paying his fine. "I am using my international appeal to say that I have learnt my lesson. There is a time and place for everything." It seems as if Sean can be a naughty boy, but he's far from being a big league badass like Old Dirty Bastard of the Wu-Tang Clan. In fact, Sean has taken a tip from the likes of Buju Banton, Supercat and Beanie Man and has tried to use his fame in a more positive way. The most obvious example of this was on his single Safe Sex. AIDS is an increasing problem in Jamaica. The devoutly church-going population don't like talking openly about sex, yet macho attitudes among young men mean that promiscuity and casual sex are often seen as positive things. The combination of the two has led to a climate of ignorance about the disease, which is still being seen by many as the sole preserve of gay men and drug addicts. Safe Sex is just as inventive lyrically and musically as Sean's other hits, but he ditches the slack themes in favour of a simple message. Better use a condom. It's also a call to his fans to discuss the subject of sexually transmitted diseases more openly. Maybe it shouldn't come as such a surprise that Sean can sometimes take a socially responsible stance. As he says, a reason in part for me becoming a DJ was that I had a lot of good ideas as to why there were certain things wrong in society and how to change it. So maybe he's not such a bad boy after all.
Basically, popular doesn't mean pop, doesn't mean popular. You understand? I know I do it from the heart and from the ground. I'm still in Jamaica, nobody can move me away from there. Nobody can tell me that, my sound is not the original thing.
It's the question that many other DJs on the dancehall scene must be asking themselves. So what's so special about Sean Paul? It's a fair point. In purely technical terms, he's by no means the greatest sing-jay in Jamaica, and his vocal range is pretty narrow. Some would even call his voice flat. He can come up with a catchy phrase in his lyrics, but he doesn't stray that much from the standard dancehall repertoire of sexy ladies and lungs full of ganja. Surely, compared to the likes of Yellow Man, Shabba Ranks, Buju Banton, Beanie Man, he's good, but not that good. But that's not the secret of Sean's appeal. His true role model is from a previous generation. Bob Marley was the man who took the sound and message of reggae beyond the Caribbean and out to the world. What many people choose to forget is that Marley was criticised at the same time for softening his sound, for making himself more palatable to a mainstream audience, weaned on the likes of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. He toned down his use of patois so that non-Caribbean listeners had a pretty good idea of the meaning of his lyrics without a dictionary. At the same time, Marley never sold out or pretended to be just another white rock and roll singer. Sean Paul would never claim to be on the same level as Marley, who's now seen as a national hero, almost a saint in Jamaica. Sean has described him as an icon and a prophet. But he's following roughly the same strategy that Marley did, aiming for audiences who might only have a vague idea about reggae and had never even heard of dancehall. At the same time, when he's duetting with Beyonce or Blue, he doesn't pretend to be an R&B smoothie like Usher or R. Kelly. He's a Jamaican who learned his skills primarily from the sound systems of Kingston, not from MTV or Soul Train. At the same time, it's clear to anyone who listens to his first two albums that Sean's aware of a wider market. Like Marley, he's toned down the Jamaican patois, which might leave conventional English speakers completely confused. In his own words, he wants to write songs where people can understand more universally and be more attached. It's the same language, but just a certain street twang. In my songs, I'm trying to express myself in a way that people can understand, but still be hardcore. He's made his moves into the world of hip-hop and R&B, but there's every sign that he's not going to stop there. He certainly has no problem with other artists who appropriate dancehall rhythms. He's praised Hey Baby by the pop ska quartet No Doubt, for example. Music is about bringing people closer together, he says, and if that involves blurring a few boundaries, what's wrong with that? He's even admitted to nodding his head to the odd Backstreet Boys track, which might mean taking open-mindedness just that little bit too far. In fact, some of his fellow Jamaicans have taken to criticising Sean for this open-minded attitude, especially when it comes to commercial American pop music. Sean's pretty blasé about the name-calling. "It don't matter to me," he says. "You know why? Pop means popular. I go and seek out the hot rhythms that are playing in the ghetto, in the dance, where people are." One example he's probably not going to follow is that of Tupac Shakur and DMX into Hollywood. His performances in his recorded skits have demonstrated that Sean's verbal skills don't really extend to acting, although that hasn't stopped some people, of course. Whatever Sean Paul does next, he's broken down many barriers in the world of music. He's educated a lot of people about the links between African American and Jamaican music and shown how the rhythms and styles of the various genres can work together. In his own words, dancehall is the son of reggae music and the brother of hip-hop, which is a pretty good definition of Sean Paul himself. He's also said, "I see dancehall, reggae and hip-hop as fused together. When I was a kid, there were the two kinds of music that spoke to me and said, 'Move.'" Nobody knows what Mr. Enriquez is going to do next, but he'll surely keep on moving.
Thank you for buying Maximum Sean Paul. We hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for further titles on Chrome Dreams coming up soon. If you did enjoy it or have any comments or suggestions, please write to us at Chrome Dreams, PO Box 230, New Malden, Surrey, UK, KT3 6YY, or email us on mail@chromedreams.co.uk. Details of our full catalogue are listed on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye for now.